Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 730. And today's date is July 30th, 2015. And the title of this episode is Now is the Time to Prepare. The Economy is Not Recovering. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand Greece right now is in a very tough situation. We see the Syriza party looking to rebel against Tsipras. Tspiras is saying the central bankers have forced him into this deal. The people voted no on the bailout deal, but Tspiras went ahead with it anyhow. And we see right now that Tspiras is calling for a referendum for the Syriza party to maybe cancel the bailout at this time. And we see even the IMF is out there saying, listen, there needs to be some type of debt write-off, because if we go forward with this, Greece is going to collapse, and it's going to collapse because there's no revenue coming in to pay for any of this interest. Where are they going to get the money? It's nowhere to be found. And the International Monetary Fund has been told Athens' high debt levels and poor record of implementing reforms disqualify Greece from a third IMF bailout of the country. So right now we're looking at the situation and we're seeing maybe there won't be any type of bailout. This whole thing seems like it's collapsing by itself. And the bailout deal is not going to help anyone anyhow. It's going to help the creditors and take Greece and make it an economic disaster. It's going to collapse the entire system. Actually, there's a report out there, and they ran the numbers. If Greece continues with the third bailout program, they will be in debt until 2073. Do you really think Greece can survive? It can't. It's not going to work, and it doesn't help the people whatsoever. Here in the United States, we understand we are being fooled. At least most of the people are being fooled by the U.S. government central bankers. And of course, they're continually telling us that everything is fine. We're in a recovery. Look at our unemployment numbers. Look at our GDP numbers. Look at our inflation numbers. Well, I looked at them back in 2008. They looked fantastic. Everything was awesome. The recovery was going great. We were in this incredible, actually it wasn't a recovery there. We were in this incredible economic boom. All the talking heads on the corporate media was saying, no, real estate prices, they're going to continually go up. We're not going to, actually, Ben Bernanke came out and said real estate, no, that's not going to go down. Plus he said we're not forecasting any type of recession. And everything looked great back then. GDP, unemployment, everything. And with a snap of a finger, everything fell apart. Yes, they're giving us information like initial jobless claims rose by 12,000, which it should be because we're seeing more and more people being laid off. But really, the initial jobless claims are at 42-year lows. But we're seeing more and more companies laying off people. If all these companies are laying off, and I'm not talking about the 300-500 people, we're talking about thousands of people. Going back to 2014, hundreds of thousands of people. And the only jobs that we're creating are these part-time waiters, waitresses, bartenders. Nothing of substance. Temp jobs on the rise. Why? Because people are taking 1, 2, 3 jobs to make ends meet. We see Walmart. There's rumors already there's going to be 1,000 more layoffs coming in Walmart corporate offices. Mondelez International Chicago Bakery, 600 people. The Boston Globe is going to be laying off people. We haven't gotten the final number yet. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, 120 people. We learned yesterday that Chevron and Saipen, a total of about 10,000 people. Now, Shell is saying 6,500 people are going to be laid off. And this is continuing throughout this fantastic recovery. Because whenever you see recovery, what do you see? Layoffs. Well, no, you see things expand. You see things grow. You see more offices open where they hire more people if business is fantastic. We know that IBM revenue for the last couple of months down. We know Caterpillar negative sales for 31 months. And of course, they came out today with their magical GDP numbers. They're telling us that the economy grew at 2.3% in the second quarter. And when we look at this, we see, okay, the first quarter was negative 2.1. Well, without anyone looking, they revised it to 0.9%. So that's very interesting. So they're going backwards, revising the numbers, making everything look better than it really is. And I'm sorry, they went back to 2014 and they took the negative 2.1 and they brought it up to negative 0.9. Last quarter, it was negative 0.2%, and they brought it into the positive range of 0.6%. So we can see right now, this is exactly what they do every single time. They go backwards in time to make everything look good. But right now, when we look at this, the economic expansion is the worst on record since World War II. Since the recession ended in 2009, which is according to the government, the economy has advanced at a 2.2% annual pace through the end of last year. That's more than half percentage point worse than the next weakest expansion of the past 70 years, the one from 2001 through 2007. While there have been highs and lows in individual quarters, overall the economy has failed to break out of its roughly 2% pattern for 6 years. And when we look at the GDP numbers, we start to see things here. Many said that the first quarter economy does not expose the true strength of the U.S. consumer. Instead of shopping in stores, they're shopping online, which wasn't captured or comparable. And it doesn't correlate. So that kind of fell apart. What actually happened was that personal consumption expenditures at a percent of GDP actually declined from 1.4% to 1.2% when netting out the harsh winter impact. As in, the real economic driver was even weaker, and this time you can't blame it on the weather. So how did the first quarter GDP rise by 0.8% in absolute terms if consumer spending, that 70% driver of the U.S. economy, declined? Simple. The BEA saw fit to boost the first quarter CapEx, fixed investment, from a decline of 0.1% to 0.6%. And the punchline, it used the traditional GDP plug, inventory, even more aggressively, with change in private inventories rising 0.9% instead of the original 0.5%. Basically, they're just manipulating the numbers again and again to convince us that we are in this fantastic recovery. But what I find very interesting about all of this is that the American people, they're starting to wake up a little bit, and they're starting to realize there is something wrong. Because when we look at the Bloomberg's Consumer Comfort Index, it plunged by the most since September of 2014 to hover at 18-month lows. Basically, what it's saying is 70% of Americans see the state of the economy as negative. Now, the 1% of Americans see the state of economy as incredible. Well, we know who the 1% are. But the majority of people are starting to realize something just isn't right. I can't put my finger on it. The stock market doesn't make sense. And I've been talking to a lot of people that aren't awake. I mean, I just bring it up in conversation, And we start talking about the stock market and things like that. And they're saying, yeah, something doesn't seem right. They keep saying earnings are down. Companies aren't doing well. Businesses are laying off people. We see it in the paper. We see it online. But the stock market keeps going up. Something just doesn't make sense. Well, what doesn't make sense is you can't make sense of manipulated numbers compared to what's really going on. They're two different animals, and they're separating. They're going their own ways. And people are starting to realize this. I mean, people started to realize this in 2008. This is why the central bank, the Fed, was out there telling everyone, no, it's contained. We don't forecast any type of recession. You people are crazy. You know, all you crazy people talking about that the system's going to collapse. We're looking at the numbers and everything looks fine. We are just fine. And of course, all those crazy people became the people that were right. The people that knew something was wrong. The people that was calling the government out, the Fed out, and saying, no, we're going to stick by this because we're looking at real information. We're looking at what's really going on down at the street level. And something is definitely going on. And of course, once it all fell apart, all those people on the corporate media, all those people that were out there calling them crazy, they never really apologized. They never said, oh yeah, I can't believe you were calling this out and you were right. They kept up with their illusion that everything is still fine and it will get better after this little bump in the road. And I remember some of the corporate media out there talking about how once we hit 2009, the recession will probably most likely be over. Well, it actually got worse. And we're seeing Puerto Rico right now. They are 48 hours away from a default. August 1st is the due date for Puerto Rico's public agencies to make close to a $200 million in bond payments. Next month, the Commonwealth is on the hook for $635 million in payments. Over the next 12 months, it's $5 billion in bond payments. And of course, New York City Mayor de Blasio, he's out there saying the government should come to the rescue of Puerto Rico and bail out Puerto Rico. Well, if there is any type of bailout, we see how this works. The bailout doesn't go to the people. It doesn't help the people. It doesn't help the economy. All it does is pay off the creditors. That's it. And this solution will not work. The bailout does not work. It will put Puerto Rico further into debt and it will kick the can down the road. That's it. That's all that will do. Now, this economic collapse is not just with Europe. It's not just with Canada, Australia, the United States. We're seeing South America right now. They're already experiencing an economic recession. We're on the verge of one. Basically, the South American economies are very heavily dependent on exports. And right now, they are being absolutely shredded by the twin blades of a commodity price collapse and a skyrocketing U.S. dollar. And we see Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, they are doing terribly. The perfect storm is hitting South America. Brazil needs to brace itself for some very tough time. Brazilian banks are currently forecasting another economic contraction for the South American country in 2016, marking the first time that Brazil's economy has shrunk in 2 consecutive years since the Great Depression. The IMF is also projecting this year that a recession for the second largest economy in South America, Argentina, and the third largest economy in South America, Venezuela, is going to hit. So at this point in time, we see the world right now completely falling apart. I mean, really, look at this. We see Europe, most of the countries there are so indebted to the Eurozone, to the IMF. They have no revenue coming in. Unemployment is skyrocketing. We see the United States has created a huge amount of debt within 7 years. And all of this creation of money where the Fed bought up the toxic real estate, the Fed bought treasury bonds, the Fed fed the banks to take that free money and put it into the stock market to keep it propped up. It did not help the everyday economy. And people are starting to notice. This is why Bloomberg, their survey of consumer comfort, is showing that people are scratching their heads saying something's wrong. Something is happening. And at this point in time, everybody needs to understand and get ready for what is coming. Now we know when the wintertime comes, we understand it's going to be cold. We understand there's going to be snow and ice. We understand that it is coming. We don't know how bad the winter is going to be. We don't know how much snow there's going to be. But you do get prepared because you know it's coming. And you buy salt, you buy shovels, you buy warm clothing, you buy firewood. You fill up your oil tanks in your home to heat your home if you use oil. And we know that this collapse is coming. We don't know how bad it's going to be. We don't know when, but we need to be prepared. And those people who have been preparing need to continually prepare. You need food, water, toiletries, medicine, especially those who maybe are diabetic or have a heart problem or any other type of problem. You need to keep cash on hand. You need some gold and silver. You need a weapon. Now, can you do all of this all at once? No, sometimes it's very difficult to do this. I know a lot of people are on budgets. I understand that people do not have the funds to do this, but you do what you can do. What's most important? Food. That would be important. Water. Does that mean go out and purchase as much as you possibly can at this point in time to leave you with nothing? No. It means that you need to do this at this point. Now, if you need to ramp things up, there are ways to do this. I mean, you can use a company called Life Reliance. This is a company that allows you to purchase, water, food, first aid, and other supplies very quickly all at once without you going out and searching for all of it. And it's actually something good to have. It's something easy to do. And everyone really needs to be prepared. But if you've been stocking up, going to Costco or Sam's Club or any one of those clubs, or just buying it from the supermarket, continually do this. Get your canned goods. Get your supplies. Don't stop. Those people are on a budget. Write down a list that's most important. What do I need right now? Well, if you can only afford canned food, buy some canned food. It doesn't have to be the most expensive, the most healthy. I mean, it's better if it is, but if you can't do it, you rather just have something to eat at that point. Make sure you have water. Water's not that expensive. Make sure you have toiletries and buy a little bit at a time. You go to the store, buy an extra can, buy a little bit more each time. I know it's difficult for many people, but at this point in time, we don't know exactly when it's going to hit. I mean, there are talks that it's going to hit this fall. I don't know. I'm watching the indicators. I'm watching and looking to see what's happening. I mean, it seems at this point we are building up to something, and it looks like it's getting closer and closer. But again, you have to remember, the government, the central bankers, they continually manipulate the system by doing things that we would never think of, even if it's illegal. They continually do this. Now, Obamacare was meant to help the people. No, it wasn't. Obamacare was to bring in tax revenue, to give tons of money to the insurance companies because they're the ones who wrote the bill, and to combine all the major insurance companies into a few, to keep premiums high, to give less benefits to the people. And we can see right now, Obamacare has been a disaster since the beginning. Look at the website. They spent millions of dollars. It didn't work. We see Obamacare overhaul leaves taxpayers on the hook for $2.4 billion. An audit found, and this audit's coming from the Health and Human Services Inspector General's office, shows that $2.4 billion taxpayer loaned the federal government to implement an Obamacare overhaul demanded by President Obama did not bring the promised result. In fact, could prove to be a total waste. So where is all of this money? It's lost, just like the website. All of this is a joke because it was designed not to help the people. It was designed carefully. And this is how it most likely went down. You had the insurance company, you had the government officials, the central bankers all in the meeting. How can we make more money and create revenue for the government? I know. Let's pretend we're giving everyone insurance benefits. We'll make the deductibles very high. We'll tell them the premiums will be low. We'll call the bill the Affordable Care Act. And this way, there's no more competition. We're all on the same level, and the insurance companies can set the prices. And then we'll start merging the companies together. So there's just a few. And how are we going to force everyone into the system so we can continually have the funds coming in, and we continually have the tax revenues coming in? We can put a penalty on it to force everyone in. If they don't join, we get the revenue anyhow. If they do join, we continually get the different tax revenues. The insurance companies make more money, and we can raise the premiums whenever we want. This whole thing is not for the people whatsoever. Now, we understand the United States government central bankers, Kiev, and other nations were trying to put together a tribunal to go after those people who are responsible for MH17. And during a United Nations meeting, Russia called out and urged Kiev to respond to certain questions about MH17. They were asked specifically, why were civilian airliners directed into the zone where hostilities were raging? And this came from Churkin. He asked Klimkin. The Malaysian Boeing passenger could have been just unaware you were involved in an armed conflict. After all, the Malaysian Aviation Authority could have been unaware you were having an armed conflict, but you knew it too well. So why did you redirect the plane? And Kiev never gave a response. So you can see at this point in time, those who redirected the plane, they knew there was a problem going on in the southeastern region because they caused it. They created the anti-terrorism force that went into this area. And why was this the only plane that was directed right over? We see Ukraine is using a lot of propaganda right now, and I see a lot of propaganda coming out of Ukraine saying that they've caught a Russian soldier. Now, during the Minsk II agreement, which Russia set up, which they initiated to stop what was going on there, they're saying that Russians are running around with ammunition, and we caught one of them. He had explosives and everything else, and there's reports coming out from Kiev, and we know they use a lot of propaganda. I hate to say it, the people in the southeastern area, most of them are Russian. They speak Russian, they are Russian. And right now, we understand that these people, yes, they're part of the Donetsk military. But of course, they're saying, yes, see, Russia is in there, they are running around, and they are doing everything that's in Ukraine. They're responsible for it. And of course, when a U.S. Marine is caught going to Ukraine, They were stopped in Austria. They were flying on a commercial airline, and they had weapons with them, an assault rifle, 9 of them, and they didn't have the special permits to go over to Ukraine, which I find very interesting. Why didn't they take a military plane over to that area? Why were they taking commercial flights? But we can see at this point in time, they said it was a complete oversight. We forgot to give them the clearance. And we see at this point in time, that's being swept under the rug. But the Russian soldier who is allegedly in Ukraine is being broadcasted all over the place. Because what they're doing right now is they're building up the propaganda. They're continually pushing it, because they're really not following the Minsk II agreement. Now, it looks like the United States has come out again and imposed further sanctions against Russia over the events in eastern Ukraine. They added 11 more people and 15 more companies, and they've been put on the sanctions list. So this shows that they're trying to help the peace process. No, what they're doing right now is they're provoking Russia. They want Russia to do something. The new firms are affiliate companies of Russian oil giant Rosneft, as well as several organizations linked to one of the country's major banks. So we can see right now they're continually doing the same thing. The U.S. has said, you know what? We're going to continually add more sanctions. We're going to provoke Russia because they're responsible for all of this. The U.S. has nothing to do with it. Even though the U.S. has advisors in there, military soldiers, training the National Guard, now the regular army, bringing in military weapons. But it's all Russia. Now, I'm not against the United States. I'm against those in power making our troops do things that make no sense to push their personal agendas. And we can see right now the general who says Russia is America's biggest threat. Well, he's going to replace General Martin E. Dempsey. So the U.S. Senate confirmed Marine General Joseph Dunford as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And we might see things ramp up at this point. We see out in Turkey, Germany is not too thrilled in what Turkey is doing. Germany wants to withdraw the Patriot missile systems from Turkey. They said, given the current developments, we need to thoroughly rethink this deployment. And they're saying that they're not following along what Germany really wants. They're criticizing the Turkish president. And they don't believe they should be attacking the Kurds at this time. Well, we understand there's a certain agenda here. And we know they're pushing the agenda. We see the U.S. is delivering 8 F-16 aircraft to Egypt at this point in the next 2 days. And in the autumn, they're going to deliver 4 more F-16s to Egypt. Russia right now is going to upgrade their defense missile systems that they're going to sell to Iran. The deal was made a long time ago, and they were going to send them over S-300 air defense systems, and it looks like they're going to be upgrading them most likely to the S-400. China is out there saying that the U.S. is continually militarizing the South China Sea by staging patrols, joint military drills, ramping up rhetoric ahead of a key regional security meeting in Malaysia next week. Yes, they are. They are provoking China in the Pacific. They're provoking Russia in the East. We can see this is continually going on. They want one of these countries to do something so they can start the war. We see Iraq's situation, it's falling apart. Not just with the people rising up, their financial situation, and they need another bailout from the IMF, $1.24 billion. This is an emergency loan for Iraq because what's happening in the country, because they're fighting against their people who want their country back. And we see most of the Middle Eastern countries are having these problems. Yemen, Libya, Iraq, Lebanon. They're all falling apart financially. Things are not going well whatsoever. Now, the U.S. and Turkey, they're struggling to define their new rebel force. Who should we use? This moderate force or this moderate force? Well, they're all one and the same, because they're trying to figure out who they should put in the safe zone. Well, it doesn't matter at this point. Turkey's going to bring in troops. The U.S. eventually will bring in troops. All the trained moderates will go to this area because they're going to say it's separate and apart from Syria. But it makes it look good in the corporate media, like, oh, they're discussing it. These plans have been laid out for a long time. They already knew they were setting up a safe zone, which is technically a no-fly zone. They already knew they were going after Assad. This has been planned for a long time. This just didn't come up out of nowhere, like they're trying to make everyone believe. Like, oh, all of a sudden, we're going to be using the bases in Turkey. All of a sudden, we're going to create a safe zone. They're following the roadmap of the Brooks Institute to the T. And they're continuing with the propaganda. Right now, U.S. intelligence and inspectors from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons have concluded that Syria has failed to fully and transparently account for its arsenal. And they have developed new capabilities and are still using chemical weapons. They have just taken it to the next level. They're pointing at Syria saying, yes, everything that we did was a waste of time. We're still coming after you because we're still using the same propaganda that you're using chemical weapons. This is exactly what is happening. Now, we understand that the United States government central bankers have been planning a false flag, an event that will occur here in the United States. And we know this is going to be part of a cyber attack. They've been leading up to this. Even this is part of their agenda to pass legislation, but it's also to continually keep everyone informed that this is coming sooner or later. And we see that they're saying that U.S. military bases are at risk for a cyber attack against the base's power grid and other utility systems, just like here in the main parts of the United States. According to a new report of the Defense Infrastructure from the Government Accounting Office, the 72-page GAO document concludes that they are completely vulnerable, and if this does occur, it would knock them out. So you can see where we're headed right here. Now, we understand something most likely will happen coming up this August. We understand Congress goes on vacation. They don't come back until after Labor Day. Indicators are definitely pointing to this. And normally what we see is some type of advisory warning. We saw this back in 2014. We saw it back in 2013. And we're getting our first advisory warning now. The U.S. has issued a worldwide travel caution for citizens, and this is including India, because we know that they came out with this report that the Islamic State said, ooh, we want the U.S. to come in and attack us because we want war. So they sent out this warning because of these increased threats coming from the Islamic State. And they're saying because of all these airstrikes against them, they're getting ready to strike someplace here in the United States. And not just the United States. It could be anywhere. It could be Europe. It could be the UK, the US. And right now, they have this advisory that just went up. So this tells us they are definitely planning something. It fits into the indicators. And we're going to have to watch this situation very carefully as we move forward. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.